mental health in your neighborhood. You know that we always have to pay attention to how we're thinking, how we're feeling, what's going on in our lives. How are all of you doing? Good. Okay, is Pastor Bruce going to say something? Aha. Okay. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So, alrighty. So, what's on the agenda for today?
Well, two things. I wanted to speak a little bit about the tragedy in Brooklyn, New York, and I also wanted to speak about the Boston Marathon at, at the last half of my broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
So there's Pastor Bruce. I see him.
Yes, I'm here working with the technology.
Aha. Well, you know what you might be able to do is to take your mask off.
Well, there's two of us in the studio, so I'm just being cautious. Oh, I can take my mask off.
Yes, because it would be good for
Oh,
people
you
to
can take
see.
your mask off in the studio.
I want people to see what you look like.
I look the same. I'm not aging at all, Louise.
Oh, okay. All right.
My hair doesn't get any grayer.
Are you on mute? I can't hear you.
Okay.
Okay, so we're making sure that Eric is can be heard here. Can you hear me loud and clear?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. And I can
Yeah.
hear myself, so it's not my problem that Eric uh, says that he can't hear me. You can't hear me at all.
Not through the microphone. I can hear you because you're sitting right there.
Okay. All
Okay.
right. So we're going to get started. Are you
Well,
ready?
I was curious about your your interest in the Brooklyn subway tragedy, Brooklyn, New York.
Right. So that actually raises.
Did you have a comment to make about that?
Well, it actually raises two concerns. Oh, you already did that. It raises two concerns for me. It raises the tragedy in New York, which is where Karen was born.
I cannot hear Pastor Bruce.
Oh, you can't? I'm here. I'm loud and clear. You can't hear me at all?
Can I hear Brother Eric?
Try it
Can
again.
you hear me?
I can hear you, Brother Eric, yes, but I can't hear Pastor Bruce.
Me
Okay.
either.
All right. So
That's
maybe
better.
you can hear me now.
And now I can hear you.
Okay. Uh, that's strange because it actually has me muted um, on my microphone. So something's going on. Can I suggest if Eric can give some of his impressions on New York, and I'll work on this.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
yeah, you gotta talk at the mic too.
Right. So, first of all, I must say that I was kind of taken back that it was found out to be an African American guy. And a lot of people are like, why? You know, like,
I know,
his,
particularly since he doesn't even come from New York.
right. Well, and the people that are questioning why I was surprised, they were like, well, I said, historically, anything like this is usually done by someone other than an African American guy. I mean, other than
Right,
the sniper and stuff like that, you don't really hear about African Americans doing this whole mass
right.
shooting thing. So so the conversation went on to, oh well, you know that blacks can do that, and it was a crazy conversation that I had to end quickly because it was going in the wrong direction. But like I said, I was a little surprised to find out it was an African American, and the fact that the news today where the van was found or the vehicle was found and keys and stuff like that. So I mean, there's an all-out manhunt for this guy. So
And they haven't actually found him.
no, not yet.
Don't you find
And
that to be strange?
Can you hear
and
Pastor?
that would be very unusual.
Conference name unavailable.
Okay,
Louise,
I'm-
can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Loud and clear?
Yes, I can see your picture.
Right.
Now I see you.
Okay. So, going back to what Eric was saying, the person of interest, which means they can't call the person a suspect as of this point. So they call
Right.
the person a person of interest. I understand that.
Right.
How a 62? Was it 62-year-old? I think it's 62. How
Yes.
did a 62-year-old disappear like this for a day, almost a day and a half, and just virtually get away?
Well, it's because what was allowed to be portrayed in the first case was smoke. So people may not have seen him or where he went.
Well, I know that. I understand that. But I'm saying this is a massive nationwide manhunt. You have the
Yes.
FBI, you have ATF, you have local police department. They're all looking for this 62-year-old black man, and they haven't found him.
I think part of it is because they just released a photo of him. So if you're a New Yorker, you're walking around and he's just walking casually, that's the last person you would probably think is involved in something like that. So until they were able to release a photo, now, I don't think he's going to be able to hide so easily.
But if this is the man that the police and the FBI are going to arrest, then you need to know that he shot his gun after the smoke and maybe a grenade or so. There was 33 shots of his gun.
Mm-hmm.
33 shots. How many people could that possibly have struck?
Right. And are we all in agreement that the smoke meant that he wasn't targeting one person, but because of the smoke, he was targeting multiple people? Or do you think that the smoke was more for getaway, not for shooting indiscriminately?
I don't really know what it was. This person that they may be trying to locate is the person who brought all of this weaponry with them on the subway.
Well, I don't know. I just think it's there are a lot of questions that I have about what just happened.
I
And
know it's just very fortunate that although something like 20 people were injured, that nobody, I mean, I think there were several people in the hospital and now they've been released from the hospital. So people have not been killed, thank God. I thank God that no one was killed during this time at 8:30 yesterday morning. And but the fact of the matter is, if it is the person they think it is, it's going to be difficult to track him down.
Mm-hmm.
why? Why?
Because
This
there,
person has nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. I'm sure they've spoken to his family members. I'm sure they know all of the places where he hangs out. Why has he eluded us for so long?
I don't know, he came from another state, not from New York. He
Was that
rented.
Philadelphia? Philly?
I'm not really sure what his where he was, but he did land at the subway, and when the the vehicle that he rented did not have any weaponry inside of it.
Right.
So evidently he took everything with him. He was carrying everything with him.
Okay.
So that's incredible. That is just incredible to have all those people, including children, on their way to school.
Yeah.
Children. I can't imagine anybody considering the possibility of shooting a child on their way to school. That's so offensive to me.
Right. I think it speaks to the mental health of this perpetrator of this crime, that this person is emotionally um, in trouble, serious trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And but it also brings me to what happened at the MBTA here in Boston. I don't know if you saw the story of the young man whose arm was caught inside of the train.
That was unbelievable. This was a young man who took the subway train every day
Okay.
to go to work. And his arm got caught in the door,
Yes.
and then his body was smashed into the wall when the train kept going.
Yes.
He was destroyed. His body was destroyed. His
How did,
his his mother, his brother, his family members are all so upset that
right.
this happened to this young man.
Right. So how does a family deal with something like that? The way they describe it, his arms in the door, the train takes off, his body hits the concrete as
Mm-hmm.
the train is going out of the train stop. His arm is left in with people on that train seeing that,
Mm.
and his body hits the ground. The last his family, the last time they saw him probably was that morning. He probably said goodbye, went on about his way. The next thing they know is that his body was severed. That to me is tragic, and they have released or put on leave the conductor because the conductor.
Yes.
Do you know the protocol for the conductor before the train pulls out, Louise?
No, I don't, but I do know that this particular person who was driving that train
Yep.
has been relieved of his duty.
Right. Right. And could be facing some criminal charges because they're saying that he failed to look before he pulled out of the train station. He's supposed to look to make sure that everybody is inside. So he neglected his obligation. Unless
Exactly.
there
Yeah.
was supposed to be a person on the outside of the train who is looking and then gives the conductor, the driver of the train, permission. Yeah, you can go. Because there wasn't a second person there. And they were saying that they haven't had second people um, doing that duty for quite a while.
I know. So here you have this terrible thing that happened in Brooklyn, New York, where thank God no one was killed. No one was badly injured. Many people were hospitalized, but they were eventually released. And then you have this one incident in Boston where this young man on his way to work is his body is destroyed. He's killed.
Yeah.
He's killed on this by by having his body sticking out of the train and hitting the concrete wall.
Yeah, it's horrendous. It's horrendous, Louise. I've never heard of something like this before. This is a new one for me. Although they said that it has happened in Boston before, where people have been caught in the middle of the train. They were trying to go back and recall how many others have happened like this.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what is going on in terms of the study, but I do know that no one in New York died, but one person in Boston did get killed.
Right. But going back to New York, Louise, when they say that nobody died, what troubles me with that is that you could have people released from the hospital or still in the hospital and they're going to survive. But what is the quality of their life going to be with multiple bullets in their knee, in their foot, in their chest, in their arm? So I don't want to say nobody was injured, nobody was killed,
Mm-hmm.
because some of them could be maimed for life, injured for life, and they might say, I would have rather died than to be living like this.
I can understand that because oftentimes when people need some kind of mental health counseling but do not apply for it,
Okay.
and then they have some other kind of anxiety related to whatever experience they just had,
Right.
then sometimes it takes a long while before they realize that they do need to have some kind of mental health counseling because of the experience that they just had.
And could it ever be too late for them to seek help because they've denied it for so long, but when they finally recognize that they do need help, it's too late to get it?
I don't ever think it's coming out of the Department of Mental Health for 50 years as I did. I cannot imagine that it's never too late for someone to have some kind of counseling at some level based on what experience they've just had. So I'm not willing to say that that it's not possible for them
To
to
get the
have
help.
counseling. They can have it. They
Yeah.
can ultimately have it.
I am very concerned about what's going to happen in New York City because I was told that because of what happened in New York City, the police department here in Boston made sure that they had the MBTA covered because they didn't want to see any copycats. And for it to happen in New York City, New York is a major city in our country. So when New York is struck, other cities and towns go on the alert.
Mm.
Especially Boston is a major city in town. So if it happens in New York, Boston is going to be concerned about a possible copycat, or that it could be a group of people striking New York, Boston.
Right.
I don't know the other major cities that they could attack.
Mm-hmm.
And Louise, you work in the city when we had these types of emergencies, these incidences that happen in other cities and states. And so, can you tell us who calls for the alert? Is it the governor? Is it the mayor? When you were involved in some of these alerts, did these incidences happen in other states and we went on the alert?
There are a number of options for people to get some kind of assistance. But I certainly provided counseling for those people who were, for example, involved with 9/11, because I was involved at the airport during 9/11, after 9/11, and I know what's involved with that, and I do know that the recommendation for counseling can be up to me.
Yeah.
It can be me. There can be other people that are sharing an assignment with me who might also have an ability to seek counseling for someone if they think it's appropriate. But if you're talking about children on their way to school, people on their way to work on a regular basis every single day,
Yeah.
for this terrible thing to have happened to them, where there was smoke and people didn't know who was who, or they didn't even speak to each other because they just knew they had to get out of each other's way, and they had to get out of the door and get into another train. But some people ended up falling on the platform, and I know you've taken the subway, because I have taken the subway, and I'm sure that Brother Eric has taken the subway. When you step out of your train, out of the door of the train you're in, you're on a platform. And when that train goes by, there's openings on both sides with tracks. So there's a lot of things that people need to know about that could be dangerous, could be involving
I have
them.
a question for both of you. I don't want to be perceived as taking over the broadcast, but I just have so much to say, and I have just so much information in my mind. It just pours out on the table here in the studio.
I can see the smoke.
Eric just made a derogatory statement, but I won't repeat it. So,
Okay.
I've been in situations when I've been in what do they call it, in the tunnel waiting for the train.
Right.
And I could see it coming toward me. I have to move back. There are people who stand close to that yellow line while the
Right.
train comes in. I can't
Right.
do that. Some type of anxiety develops on the inside of me as I watch that train coming. And so I move back. But I was told that if you try to enter the train and the doors closed on you, aren't those doors supposed to reopen?
They do not, as they do in elevators. They should, but they do not. At least I know the Massachusetts transportation trains, the doors don't do that. Because I've seen people's bags get caught in the door, arms get caught in the door, foot get caught in the door. So yeah, they don't reopen once they hit something.
Okay, are you saying you're saying they don't reopen, but
Automatically, they
they're
don't.
not supposed to?
No.
what is the strategy behind that? Wouldn't it be better like an
like
elevator?
an elevator door.
Or my garage door. My garage door won't
I
close.
believe the reasoning for that would be because then people can just hold up the train and continue to try to get on the train and stuff like that, and then the trains will really be behind schedules and stuff like that. So it's up to the conductor to close and open up the doors.
Hmm. Well,
And
I can remember when I was living in Dorchester, I can remember taking the Red Line into downtown Boston to spare the cost of parking. But if I was on duty, I didn't have to take the train at all. I could be covered
mhm.
by the Department of Mental Health. So there's different things that people have to deal with based on who they are, what they're involved with, what their responsibilities are, where they're headed. There's all kinds of things for people to think about what's important for them or what's important for their children or their young adults.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you know, Sister Louise, but I know Pastor knows. I spent many years with the Guardian Angels riding this subway system here and in New York and other cities. And I remember my early years in the Guardian Angels and patrolling New York. I've actually seen someone commit suicide by jumping in front of a train. And that sight doesn't leave you.
You've seen that?
I've seen it.
Oh my
And
God.
the fact that we stuck around and seeing them bring up the body in multiple body bags, because once that train hits you, the body just pretty much explodes. And so I can only imagine what the people on the train here in Mass or Boston saw when that young man got his arm caught in the door.
So let's go over what you just said. So a person commits suicide. They jump on the tracks as the train is approaching.
Mhm.
Right? They get hit. All right. Train stops. Then they recognize that somebody has jumped and somebody is under the train. So the only way to get to that person, does the train just completely continue to move?
I remember the people who do it are who really want to do it are smart, because if the train's coming from the left to the right, you don't want to be at the far right end of the platform, because the train has slowed down so much that you might do it and survive. So you want to be towards the beginning of that tunnel where that first train's coming in, and it's coming in fast. So if you're jumping in front of the train, that train hits you and the body just goes whoosh, like that. So it's not necessarily that the body's underneath the train, because it comes to a screeching halt. So now it's just a matter of finding the pieces.
I couldn't do that job.
No.
And I have a friend who worked for the police. There was a car accident, and I think a child was not in the back seat, but in the back of the van
Mhm.
with no seats. And I think the child came out of the car,
Wow.
and they found the body somewhere. My friend started drinking and became an alcoholic because of that one incident. And we know that our law enforcement officers see
Yes.
multiple incidences.
Mhm.
A, when they're attacked, or they walk on a scene and see the bodies in a room for a couple days or maybe even a month. Those multiple horrific scenes can cause people to emotionally be in trouble for the rest of their lives. Louise, have you ever counseled or been around law enforcement officials who have undergone that kind of crisis?
Yes, and the way that is managed is anyone who is in the police department or the fire department, they are brought separately for counseling and they're not to be seen in the same location, that there would be other people that would also be provided some kind of counseling. So we always had to make sure that we separated who was who. The police were here, the fire department was here, the people who were customers, that was a different category.
I
So you
think
need,
it should be mandatory for all police officers and EMS and first responders to see someone from mental health at least once a month. I think it should be mandatory because if you leave it up to them, it's a sign of weakness to them to go on their own. Yeah, they may talk to each other, but all they're doing is spreading that to one another, and they're really not addressing the situation. They can't go home, or a lot of them won't go home and talk about it with their families because they don't want to bring it, what they call bringing their work home. So I think it should be mandatory that at least once a month they should go seek, if they arrive on the scene where something horror is like that, I think they should go see someone within the next 48 hours. They need to go speak to someone.
again, Eric, you're talking about something specific for a certain group of people who need some kind of mental health counseling, need to be able to obtain it and not just turn their backs on it and walk away.
And walking away for some men or women is, rather than going home, they will go to a bar or a tavern and and sit with either fellow officers or to sit with common everyday people, and they get themselves in trouble.
Louise, do you know if that, I believe that the Boston police had a place for these guys to go off of River Street in Hyde Park. Do you know if that place is still there? I think it might have been turned into housing, but I'm not sure.
Well, Hyde Park is where the classroom is for the police department.
Right. I know the headquarters is there, but right off of
Yeah.
River Street, right between Mattapan and Lower Mills, is the mental health. There's something over there. I know that the police had like an office where officers would go if they needed to speak to someone. I don't know if that's still there. I don't know if you.
It might be, and since I have retired now for a few years, I cannot confirm what you're talking about at the moment, because I may have lost the information that was necessary to answer your conversation.
So it's not only the police officers, or it's not only the law enforcement officers who need support after watching somebody's body with their arm inside of the train hitting a wall and splitting in two. What about the people that were on that train? What about the people that were on the train, that they were in the train that had the arm sticking in? What happens to them?
Well, that's another group of people who need to have mental health counseling, but they need to have it specifically designed to meet their needs.
I heard what you said, but I don't understand what you're saying. When you say that it's designed for their needs, I would assume that a person would say, I want to go to see a counselor, and they look up different counselors and find out what their insurance would cover and if it would cover this counselor. Are you saying that they would create a special counseling session for a person who's seeing something like that?
it might be necessary. It depends on what the circumstances are and who the people are and where the location is. Because I know that when I was providing counseling at Logan Airport,
Yeah.
I was not directly providing the counseling, but I was recruiting counselors to come in and provide the counseling that would not cost anything to the people who needed it.
Well, again, I read the papers yesterday and I saw the story. They were doing a profile of the young man whose arm was inside of the door, and they were doing a profile, and it was sad reading it. And I'm sure if the family read it, it caused more grief. And I can't imagine.
Oh, terrible,
I can't
terrible.
imagine how a family would handle something like that.
It wouldn't be easily solved. It would have to be, there would have to be some kind of provision, but it would not necessarily mean that the problem would be solved.
What do you mean? It doesn't mean that the problem would be solved.
It might mean that the starting someone off on some kind of counseling might be temporary. And then, based on what the reason for the counseling is, might be necessary for them to continue having counseling. They may need to have some other kind of discussion with someone about what it is that they need. Now, for example, the people that I have to hang up this phone here, but the people who learn how to, let's say, learn how to use guns legally, that has to be done properly by the right people at the right time. And it should not be done just to accommodate somebody else's interest.
Hmm.
Could you explain what you just said? I'm trying to understand what specifically.
All I'm saying is that if you decided that you wanted let's say you, for example, one of the things that you wanted to do was to get a license to carry a gun legally in Boston.
Yeah.
You have to be able to do that properly. You also have to be able to understand what your circumstances are, where your location is, and what might be effective for you versus somebody else.
Let's open that up a little bit, especially with Eric here. I have people around me who own weapons,
Uh-huh.
and they have never been in the armed services, and neither have I. I have not been trained how to protect myself physically. I have not been trained how to protect myself with the use of a weapon, a gun, let's say. So it would be very difficult for me if I had a gun and I was carrying it. If someone came in my direction and threatened me, and I felt that I had the right to pull my gun, it would be difficult for me to switch off my civilian mode and go into the crisis mode and actually pull the trigger and shoot somebody. I don't think that I could do that.
Well, that's good. I'm happy to hear that, because that is not always what happens when somebody is carrying a gun and they don't really have the legal right to carry it.
Well, most of the people that I know that have the legal right to carry a gun, listen, I can't say most, some of the people have not been trained to turn off this common everyday person mode and go into defend myself mode, because I don't know if they could shoot, and if they do shoot, what is that going to do to them? So what about you?
I want to say that it happens instinctively. The
Isn't
fight or flight.
Isn't that dangerous?
Well, it can be because what a person thinks of as a threat. Like you might think something is an extreme threat and it really isn't, or so it's and that comes with again training. So yeah, so if you're going to be one of those people who go and get a license to carry, don't let it be okay. I got my license, I'm carrying, and don't stay up on your training.
Well, I think it's not the NRA, but I've seen many commercials on TV where they show a person who has a license and they are carrying a weapon, and it says, just because somebody invades your house or just because somebody does this and that, if you do not know, then they hold up the pamphlet, the rules and regulations for when this firearm can be drawn and used, you can find yourself on the other side of the law, right?
Absolutely.
So
Exactly.
That's my concern with people around me who carry weapons, and again, I would default to not shooting somebody. So that's why I don't have a license, and that's why I haven't pursued it. So I asked you a question. I should be looking here, right? I asked Eric a question. If he had a weapon, if he was faced with a situation where it's life and death, would you use your weapon?
If it's a situation of life and death, yes.
Well, and wait a minute. Now go back to what we started talking about with the Brooklyn, New York subway.
Right.
If that man carried weaponry on the train, but didn't have the right to carry it, but we now hear that whoever it was shot his handgun 33 times. What do we think about that? Is that legal?
Obviously, it's not legal.
Right. So I'm glad we went back to this because I pulled up an article in the New York Times, and so the man's name is Frank James, 62 years old. They said they found a collection of belongings on the train that they believe belonged to the gunman, including a Glock 9mm handgun with 3 ammunition magazines, a hatchet, fireworks, and a liquid believed to be gasoline. So whoever it was, if it wasn't him, if it was him, with all that, they were planning on doing some damage.
So if you were on that train and you were carrying, would you have responded, Eric, to shoot to kill?
Well, with the situation being with smoke and you can't see, no.
So you would not have drawn your weapon?
Not if I couldn't see clearly who I was shooting at, no.
Would you have drawn your weapon if there was no smoke bomb and the person was going to shoot?
Yes.
And it's possible that even though you might have had the right to carry, that it would not be appropriate for you to fire on someone that you don't understand the circumstances about.
Well, the circumstances is a guy is shooting random people on the train. If I'm on the train and I have my weapon with me and I can save some lives, even if I have to face the consequences of it, I'm saving lives.
But you see, in his mind, he's set in his mind for this is 1 + 1 = 2. I understand that 1 + 1 = 2, but I can't draw that conclusion and say that I would shoot somebody. So the big question would be, why are you carrying a weapon?
Why?
Me.
Right, exactly,
If
exactly.
I'm not going to pull a weapon out in that kind of a situation and assist
Mhm.
my fellow citizens, then why am I carrying a weapon?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, if you don't understand the circumstances under which you can draw your weapon and you may not draw your weapon, then you need to be able to know where it is you're getting your license from to carry. You need to know whether it's the city of Boston, whether it's the town of Braintree, whether it's another part of the community. Somebody needs to know. Now, there are some people who are police officers who have the right to carry a gun, but may not be able to use it under certain circumstances, wherever they might be.
Okay, I heard what you just said, but I don't understand what you just said.
So I think she's saying, like, if you're, let's say you're a Boston police officer and you're carrying, and again, licenses can be for multiple states and stuff like that. So when you go through firearm training, they tell you where and where you cannot carry. So if you're a Boston police officer, let's say you take a trip to Vegas and you're carrying with you, you drove there, you're carrying, and you come across a crime. Let's say someone robbing a bank or something like that. Technically, you can intervene as long as let them know that you are a police officer, even if you're from another state.
Oh, you're a police officer.
Right. So I'm not sure what the situation would be where a police officer from another state would be pulling his gun out if it wasn't to either save himself or save someone else. So other than that, I'm not sure why,
But a civilian coming into a bank robbery
Mhm.
where people have weaponry, a civilian doesn't have the right to act like a on-duty or off-duty police officer.
That is correct, but and it has happened where a person who has license to carry has used it to save someone else's lives, and that person did not face. They might have tried to charge him, but they didn't spend any time in jail or anything like that because they end up saving people's lives.
And the other thing too is that we can't always assume that everyone who works in a bank has the right to carry. They may not.
Mm-hmm.
They may have a set of circumstances that make it possible for them to provide an opportunity to call in the police department, but they may not be in a position where they can provide the
Law
use of their
enforcement
gun.
services.
So
Right.
let's take a look at this. When you're joining law enforcement, when you're getting sworn in as an elected official, even when you're taking your oath of citizenship, part of that oath is that you will protect, the United States from foreign and domestic. So that's from people from afar and people from within. So with that oath, it is your duty, if you can, without getting yourself harmed, is to protect your fellow Americans.
Mm-hmm.
As a law enforcement officer.
No, if you look at the oath that you take when you're becoming a citizen. Part of that oath is to protect the United States from foreign and domestic.
I think the problem with interpreting that to say that if you're faced in a situation that you're carrying a weapon, that you can use that weapon to defend the United States in a situation like the train,
Mm-hmm.
I think goes a little bit too far. But I don't know.
Right.
But that's why I invited Louise to be on my broadcast in your neighborhood, because I assume. Do you know that she has a stash of guns? She's a gun. She has a license to carry. You don't have your license anymore?
No, I don't.
Oh, so if you were in that situation on the train, there was no smoke to get his argument out the way. There was no smoke at all, and you could see the perpetrator shooting people. Would you have pulled your weapon, Annie Oakley, and shot?
No, I think that I would have, I might have done something entirely different.
Like,
Like asking that person to drop their weapon while they could take a look at my weapon.
listen, Annie Oakley.
Even in training, they tell you don't draw it unless you plan on using it.
Who, say it again.
In training, they tell you don't draw it unless you plan on using it.
Do you hear that, Louise?
I didn't hear him.
I'll articulate it because I can articulate better. He said, even in training, you were taught, do not draw your weapon unless you are ready to use it.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. What?
Well, that's based on the circumstances of your license.
But you already have your weapon drawn, saying to the person, "Look at this." You're saying, "Look at this weapon. Now drop your gun."
And you might be able to identify someone else on the in the train who is also on the police department who has a gun with him.
Well, if I saw that, I would pull. My gun would have never come out. I wouldn't have acted like Annie Oakley.
But you see what's going on between the three of us? We're all saying
different ways of thinking this through.
But
I'm the least likely person to shoot somebody. I think Eric has already said, don't come near me. And I think that you're very close to Eric to say, you see what I got here? And they didn't teach you that in training. They said, if you pull that gun, be prepared. And I wonder, when I was watching the video of the people on the train, that smoke, not that smoke was extremely dangerous, but I would have thought that maybe there was a chemical weapon.
Right, but even with the smoke grenade, even the bang can harm you. Like, it bangs. It sounds like a bomb.
Mm-hmm.
And he used two of them. Yeah.
We don't always know what's ahead of us. We don't know what's behind us. We don't always know what's ahead of us. So I would suggest that we not carry a weapon, that we not plan to use a weapon unless we have the circumstances absolutely understandable in our own minds before we do anything.
We have
I think I'm running out of time.
1 minute.
Louise, you did it again. You just talked and talked and talked and ate up all the time. You didn't give Eric and I an opportunity. We took time off from work to be with you. We didn't have a chance to talk.
Well, go right ahead, both of you.
Well, I want to thank you for inviting me to be your guest today. I don't know how Eric got in on this, but anyway, I was an invited guest. I wasn't a stray. So I appreciate the fact that you invited me and that you didn't invite Eric, and we'll just have to try to figure out how to quiet him down the next time.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Thank
you. That's very interesting how you would manage to manage my life for me.
Well, I'm going to say goodbye because we're out of time.
Okay.
Bye.
See you next week.
Okay, roll the one.
Bye.
So you know how to stop the recording.
Yep.
And that one's in.
Recording stopped.